Today I'm in Spain, near Mazarrón. This is a part of Spain I come to quite regularly because this is where my mum lives. And today we're going to have a wander up this dry river valley and just have a little nature ramble. But a nature ramble with a difference, because we're in a different country from what you normally see me talking about. Now I expect we will find some familiar things here. I expect we will also find some things that are recognisable, but not things that I would find growing at home. And maybe one or two mysteries as well. Tiny little splash of colour over here, and I recognise that is a poppy. And we'll talk about this blue plant a bit later. Over here we've got a cistus. I think that's a cistus. I'm not sure which species. And then a vetch. Vetches are among my favourite of the wildflowers. This is in the pea family, and you can see that from the shape of the flowers. Pea flowers are very often this shape. Has it got any scent? Not really. Whereas the spring flora back at home is dominated by things like the carrot family. I think there was a tortoiseshell butterfly just went past. So whereas the spring flowers back at home are dominated by the carrot family, the spring flowers here in southern Spain, I think it would be fair to say that the daisy family is where it's at. So this is a garland daisy. Lots of these about. This is daisy family. Not quite sure what that is. Is that maybe senecio? Again, this is a daisy family thing. This is the wire netting bush. This plant grows these weirdly kind of hexagonal structures of thorns, and it produces these tiny little yellow daisy flowers. The other family that we'll find, I think, is quite well represented here is the pea family. So we've already seen the little, what is it, rose pea or something like that, the scarlet vetch down there. This is another pea family plant, and if we can get close enough and look at the flowers, we'll see that they're quite similar to the pea flowers we saw on the vetch. They're similar shape. That's called narrow-leaved scorpion vetch. Another fine example of that grey-leafed cistus there. So we're just going to take a really gentle, peaceful wander up here in this beautiful valley. It's achingly beautiful at this time of year, and see what we can find. And there's two things here which are of particular interest to me. The first is down here at my feet, and this is wild thyme being enjoyed by a bee, a honeybee. So if we just take a little bit of this thyme here, oh, very aromatic. We actually came down here last night and picked a bit of that and cooked some potatoes with thyme and one other herb. This other herb. Look at this magnificent rosemary bush. Almost a rosemary tree. And again, so aromatic, so much flavour and aroma in this rosemary, partly because of the harsh conditions it's growing in. cistus is looking absolutely gorgeous. There are several species of cistus here. We'll have a look and see if we can see any of the others as well. We've got here, that's another pea family. I can tell just from the leaves that that is pea family. Oh, there's a flower. I will get the identification of that. But yeah, that's pea family. Now this other purple blue flower here, you may recognise, and that completes the trio of aromatic plants from the Lamiaceae, which is, this is lavender. So again, just a really lovely aromatic plant. Not a lot of foliage on this, but if I get a bit of the foliage and just crush it and have a sniff, yes, very perfumed. While we're here, another little culinary surprise down here. This is fennel. And there's a tiny little stripy snail on it. So you can probably imagine this is quite an exciting place for me to be, because there are wildflowers here that happen to be known to me as culinary herbs. I'm not quite sure what this is. I'm going to say mint family. I will look this up and we'll find out. I got the family right. This is in the mint family. This is Pseudodictamnus hirsutus. Hirsutus meaning hairy, and the plant is indeed hairy. So it's mint family. Does it have a scent to it, I wonder? Let's take one of the leaves down here, crush that and see if it's got an aromatic scent. It may not be pleasant actually, because some plants in the mint family are aromatic but just not nice. Actually, no, just mostly leafy, slightly herbal scent to it. Another beautiful cistus there in full flower. The petals on this are particularly lovely. They're like crinkled paper. And again, the whole of this valley is buzzing with bees. So I think we will have a little wander up here, because here we've got a slightly different environ here. A little breeze has picked up actually, so we'll just take a moment to walk up a hill while there's a cooling breeze. But here we've got a piece of bedrock, but it's got all sorts of little holes and crevices in it, and each little hole has got plants growing in it. Mostly thyme. There's rosemary there growing in a pocket in solid rock, but I can see over there other plants, and actually I can see splashes of colour up the bank here. So I think we'll have a little climb and see what we can find. Here's a little plant growing in the rocks here that always brings joy to my heart. This is a wild gladiolus, possibly Gladiolus imbricatus, or maybe Illyricus. I see another one up there actually. This one looks a bit different actually. It might be a different species. Or it might just be a different colour form. And here's another thing up on this higher ground. Another pea family flower. Tiny, tiny little yellow pea flowers in clusters of 4. Reminds me a little bit of bird's foot trefoil, but I think this is a vetch. I think this might be related to the scorpion vetch that we saw before. And here's another, again, different little pea flower. I wonder what that one is. I actually managed to identify this one out in the field here. I managed to get a signal for my Seek app. This is called bladder vetch, and actually there we go. Aptly named, because the seed pods are inflated little bladders. Just there. Can you see those? We've got agaves growing in there. Don't think they're native to this region, so that's probably been planted there, or it's escaped from cultivation somewhere else. But of course it does fit right in here. This is the kind of arid or semi-arid climate beloved of those group of plants. A lot of the plants here are adapted to fluctuations in the water supply. So a lot of these plants are waxy or have fleshy leaves, or have a covering of grey hairs to protect them from drying out too much. I am here a bit earlier in the year than I've visited this particular area before. We've done a ramble up this valley before, actually, in a previous video. I think perhaps with not quite such good camera equipment as this. But we're a little bit earlier in the year this time, so there are more of the early spring flowers out still, but also the rainfall this past year in southern Spain has been unusually high. And so a lot of these plants are, well, the whole place is greener, more lush, more actively growing than perhaps it would have been on my previous visits. So these yellow flowers here, again, this is this scorpion vetch here, and then the garland daisies down here. But there are other yellow plants in the background there, and that's some species of mustard. When I get to a specimen that I can get to without wading through undergrowth, we'll identify that one too. So this blue plant down here, and again, I don't think you could really deny that those are blue flowers, although people commonly do. This is a pimpernel, Anagallis. So in the UK we typically have the orange version of this, the scarlet pimpernel, but this is a vibrant cobalt blue pimpernel. Now I am wandering down a dry river valley, and I have just told you that the rainfall in this region has been especially high just of late. That was about a month ago, so we're not at significant risk of encountering a flash flood. It's actually been dry for the last month or so, but the moisture is in the soil now. Some species of thistle here, I think this is the yellow thistle, if I recall correctly from previous visits. This one's called Carthamus arborescens. So its arborescens means becoming like a tree. So this is a tree, nearly a tree thistle. Now here we do have a member of the carrot family. This is a sea holly, Eryngium, which I believe is in the carrot family. I'm not sure which species it is, but that is an Eryngium. Anyway, I've only gone about 50 yards and I've been talking far too much. Let's go for a wander further up and see what else we can find. But before we do, we probably need to talk about this plant, which there's a lot of about. Masses of tiny, tiny white flowers. And if we were to get really close, we can see that they are little pea flowers in little spherical clusters. And so this is like a clover, and this is called prostrate canary clover. And it is very much being enjoyed by the bees. Profusion of flowers, bees of many different species, including tiny little solitary bees, honeybees, various other bee species I don't recognise. But the whole area is buzzing with them. More of these magnificent sea hollies here, Eryngium. I think this is Eryngium campestre, the field eringo. A lot of the other species of sea hollies are more blue than this. They're more glaucous in the leaf than this. This one's just a kind of greyish green. For years and years I came here and I thought I was looking at a conifer. And then I realised I wasn't looking at a conifer because it has thorns. And so I thought I was just looking at some thorn bush. But this is in fact asparagus. This is Asparagus albus. White asparagus. Not the same white asparagus that you see in jars, which is blanched, cultivated asparagus. This is white asparagus, so called because the stems of the plant are naturally white. These two trees ahead of us here, I'm not sure about that one on the right, that may be an olive tree actually on the right there, but we've got a fig tree, the one with mostly grey branches and a few little shoots of leaves, and a fan palm of some sort. In a previous video I stopped and placed the camera here because this little bit here reminded me of a meadow, even though we're in notionally quite an arid environment. I don't see any figs on the tree. Perhaps I should curse it. This is a medic, a clover-like plant, and again a pea family plant. The little yellow flowers there, something in the pea family. I think it's a medic, something like that anyway. It is at the moment the hottest part of the day. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I did come out here on purpose at this time because certain things, especially the cistus, really only flower in the heat of the day. I might just tack on the end of this video a couple of visits at different times of the day, like the evening or the early morning, when there will be different flowers in bloom. Here's another pea family flower. And again, some kind of broom type of thing. Tiny little yellow pea flowers on it. Buzzing with bees. Very pretty. Viewers from the United States might find certain things about this landscape familiar. It's similar geologically and climate-wise and biome-wise to, for example, parts of California. The detail is quite different though. The detail of the actual species here, although a lot of the plants have the same adaptations, the exact distribution of species will be quite different. So here's a small example of that white asparagus. This is Asparagus albus, and see the stems are this ivory white colour. This plant is edible. The very young shoots that come up in spring. We're too late today, it's the end of March, but earlier in the year the locals do come out and pick this. There's a rather fine specimen of a lavender bush. I can hear a skylark. Here's a plant that's flowers don't last all day, so here's a thing we definitely would have had to come out at a specific time for. So this is an oxalis. related to wood sorrel in the UK. When I lived in Cyprus as a child, we used to call this yellow bells, but I think we just made that name up. I don't think that's what it's actually called. And this, again daisy family, I would say, possibly Senecio. But this oxalis, this yellow oxalis plant, there is also another oxalis here which has got double flowers. So I don't know if this is a natural mutation of that one, or if it's a different species perhaps. I'll try and get the answer for you and put the answer on screen if I can find it. Here's a slightly nicer and taller specimen of that single flowered one. Here's another strikingly blue plant down here, although I suppose you'd probably call that technically bluish purple, although actually those withered flowers there, the older flowers, are definitely blue in colour. This is Cretan Viper's Bugloss, and the flowers are interestingly variable on this plant. So there's an example of a plant with lovely purple flowers, the best colour. Here's the same species with flowers that are ranging between pink and magenta, and it is typical for this plant for the younger flowers to open pinkish purple, and as they age for them to turn towards a sort of royal blue colour. The pink flowers are the ones that still have pollen and are offering nectar, but this family of plants, which is the borage family, retains its older flowers even though they're not fertile anymore, and it is theorized that those older flowers enable bees to spot it from a further distance. And so the older flowers, even though they're not reproductive anymore, they're probably actually setting seed at that point, they retain their petals and they change colour just to provide a clearer visual signal for pollinating insects from a greater distance. That's the theory. We're coming up to a small farm here, a small holding I suppose. I think this might be the property that owns some of the land in this valley that we're walking through as well. So these fig trees aren't accidentally here, these have been planted and they do belong to somebody. It just occurred to me that I might not have adequately explained myself about what I meant by single and double flowers before, in specific context of this yellow oxalis plant here. This is Oxalis pes capre, I think it is a Bermuda buttercup it's called. And so this is a single flower, 5 petals, simple arrangement, just, you know, it's a flower. This is what we would call a double flower, because it's the same plant, same species indeed, but there's been a mutation and it's created these multiple petals. Sometimes these aren't fertile, sometimes the plant produces additional petals in place of reproductive structures. However, this plant spreads around by little bulbils, so and offshoots and things, so this plant can reproduce vegetatively as well as by seed. So they are the same species. That's the single flowers here and there, and that's an example of the double flowered version. Oh, this is different. So this plant climbing all over here. Now from the leaves we might be tempted to say pea family. I think this is pea family. Slightly unusual flowers, slightly elongated flowers for a pea family, but puts me in mind of tufted vetch. So I'm going to say this is a vetch, but it's not tufted vetch like we have in the UK. So I'll find out what that is and let you know. Oh, it's definitely pea family, because look at the seed pods. You can even see the little pea seeds inside of there. So the pods, the fruits are little pea pods. Well, so this particular little vetch here has defied identification by my plant app, which is Seek, which is the plant app I use when I come across things I don't know what they are. By the way, in case you're wondering whether that's me being hypocritical, because I've spoken out against the idea of using plant identification apps in the past, but the context where I think they shouldn't be used is if you're intending to eat the thing. So if you want to identify a plant, you have no idea what it is, and you intend to eat it, a plant app may steer you wrong in a fatal direction. And so I wouldn't use them in that context. However, in this context, where I'm encountering lots of plants which are a little bit unfamiliar to me, although I may recognize the family, the plant finder apps can be really good for narrowing that down, because often if I've recognized the family, I'll know whether it's telling me the truth or not. Here is a different thing to look at. So this is the prostrate canary clover, the white stuff here. I'm not quite sure why that's called prostrate, because it's quite bushy and upright here, but anyway. And here we've got a convolvulus growing across the top of it, a bindweed, and these beautiful pink bell flowers. Now these will be quite ephemeral, so we're lucky to have seen them at this time of day. In the evening those will probably be gone, and early in the morning they won't be open yet. I see some interesting things over here which I think are in the amaranth family, so we're just going to go and have a look at that. But before we do, euphorbia, a spurge of some sort, possibly sun spurge, maybe not. Corn spurge apparently, not one that I'm familiar with, but I recognise the family because euphorbias are quite distinctive. This is a very typical looking euphorbia here with the green bracts, little yellowish, almost invisible flowers, and also just the layout of the branching is particularly distinctive of euphorbia, the way it's got a sort of geometric look to it. Anyway, we're going to have a look over here. So yeah, anyway, as I was saying, the point about the plant finder apps was that, yeah, I used it to try to identify that vetch there, and all it's able to tell me is that's a vetch. That's as far as I got by myself. So we haven't actually managed to, the app hasn't really told me anything I didn't already know. I was hoping the app might have actually narrowed it down to a species, but it didn't. Oh look, a snail. Bit hot for you to be out in the sunshine, isn't it? So what I'm seeing here is what I think is a very familiar plant. In fact, I think this is a plant I would commonly think of as being called sea beet. Although this may not be the sea beet version. This may be Beta vulgaris rather than Beta vulgaris subspecies maritima. This is one of the ancestors of beetroot, spinach beets, sugar beet. It could be an escape from this field. It could have been grown here as leaf beet or something, and this could be the escape from cultivation in this field, whatever's growing up there. I can't see up over the ridge, but this is definitely a beet, and actually you can see that striped red, those red stripes on the stem there, very characteristic of sea beet or Beta vulgaris. The leaves of this, edible and quite delicious, and even though I'm out of my foraging context here, my common foraging context, this plant I know well enough that I would recognise it anywhere. Before we leave this area, actually, and I can see, I'm up on the bank now, I can see that the cultivated crop in this field is peas, just regular peas. We've got another quite familiar plant here. This is a goosefoot, quite closely related to the beet plant we saw down there. So it's in the amaranth family, but this is a goosefoot. This is, I think, nettle-leaved goosefoot. leaves do look like stinging nettle leaves. Nettle-leafed goosefoot, so that's another forageable, edible plant here. And this one here, oh, this could be buckwheat actually. Yeah, I think this one might be a buckwheat, so this might be in the Polygonaceae. I will find out and let you know. So apparently this one's called Devil's Thorn. This is Rumex spinosa, so it's related to dock. It's in the dock family. Rumex being docks and sorrels. So Polygonaceae, and this one's called Rumex spinosa, Devil's Thorn. I can't see any thorns on there, but I'm not going to go rummaging around for them. And there is also a mallow over there. Possibly common mallow or field mallow or something. We'll get a better look at that in a different location because I'm halfway up a bank. I'm halfway up a steep bank at the moment, so we'll get back to the path. I'm sure we'll find another one of those mallows to look at in just a moment. There's a rosemary in flower there. Lovely pale blue rosemary flowers. A little bit less blue, I would say, than the rosemary we have back home. This is a bit paler. I've seen various butterflies here as well that I haven't been able to recognise. I've seen some that look a little bit like large and small white, but also I've seen various species I didn't recognise. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to get close enough to get a decent picture of them. Just saw a bird alight on the top of that tree there. Looks like a blackbird but with a white tail. And I think that's a bird called a wheatear. There it goes. I have in the past followed this dry river valley all the way up into those hills, over the watershed, and then followed a different one back down into the town of Puerto de Mazarrón, which is about a 10-mile walk. We won't be doing that today because I think it's a bit too hot. I think that would be a trip to do, setting off early in the morning, so that at least some of the trip is done out of the full heat of the sun. It's not as unbearably hot here as it will be in a few weeks' time. I actually only just got into shorts today, so anyway. This, now what's this called? This one looks like it might be mallow family, but it's not, and it's called virgin something, can't remember, but anyway, I'll get the ID for that on the screen for you. These are olive trees, and again, they're not growing here by accident. These are planted and they belong to somebody. But at the moment there are no olives on them, just the flowers. If you happen to recognise in passing any plant that I haven't stopped to identify, do feel free to mention it in the comments. A timestamp is always useful. So there is a branch of this valley that goes up there, but I don't think there's a path that goes up there, so we're not going to try and go up that bit. We'll go a bit further up here. I'm not going to go all the way up to the watershed today because it's a bit too hot, and mad dogs and Englishmen and all that lot. But yeah, you can see here there is evidence of the flow of water. So there's a sandy bit here where water has cascaded down here and flowed, but also plants are still continuing to grow. So there's a couple of pieces of thyme, a couple of plants of thyme there next to that rock. Another one of those Anagallis, the Pimpernel, and something. Oh, and this is the bugloss here. This is the Cretan Viper's bugloss. So many things to see. And obviously these plants are really ordinary here. These are just this is their normal habitat. But it's always nice for me to be able to see a different place where the distribution of species is different. And it also includes some things that I only really know as garden plants, like the rosemary and the thyme and the lavender. Oh, there's a different one. Here's a different thing. Cabbage or mustard family. Some sort of... Oh, it's actually quite a fleshy one, isn't it? Quite a thing with purple flowers here. Might be Iberis or something like that. Some sort of rocket or mustard family plant. I will get the idea on that one. Here's a slightly easier or more accessible specimen. These glaucous, slightly fleshy blue-green leaves. Beautiful little four-petaled pale purple flowers. This is called violet cabbage. It's not a particularly attractive name, is it, for something that's so pretty? Oh, here's a different cabbage family or mustard family. So this one here is with the white flowers. I'm fairly sure this is wild rocket. Bit hard to tell because the leaves are all intertwined with other things, but I'm fairly sure that that is wild rocket. And to complete a trio of mustard family then, here's a yellow mustard. Hello. Hiya. So this is a yellow mustard here of some sort, and again we can be really confident that this is in the mustard family, well, just because of the shape and arrangement of the plant, but also primarily because it has these four-petaled flowers. The family used to be called Cruciferae because the flowers are cross-shaped. It's now called Brassicaceae after Brassica, which is the cabbage family. Right, well, I'm starting to get a little bit hot now, so I think we're going to go as far as that big bush there. Let's see if that's anything interesting. I don't recognise what that is from a distance. And then we'll probably turn round, head home, get in the shade with a nice cool drink, and maybe come out again this evening, so when we've got a different set of flowers in bloom. This is really interesting. This is this yellow oxalis, but where it's grown up through the middle of this rosemary bush, these flowers must be like 60 centimetres tall. In fact, they're quite tall and vigorous here as well. It's probably just because this little ditch here might have a little bit more moisture than the surrounding area. I don't recognise that evergreen, this dark coloured bush here. That'll be an interesting one to try to figure out. It's got some sort of flowers on it as well. Oh, it might be a carob actually. So pea family by the look of the leaves, and these little red flowers. Is this a carob? It seems a bit compact for a carob tree. Not sure. We will figure that out. But it's got these little red inflorescences here. So this is a mastic tree. I think so named because it was cultivated for some kind of gum or sticky resinous substance that it produces. So I'm not sure. Was I right about it being pea family? The leaves do look like pea family. Just the pinnate leaves here. Could be pea family. I don't know. I'm out of signal range now. So whilst I can still identify plants, I can't actually look them up at the moment. So more information about that on the screen. Just over here, this is an interesting thing. So this yellow and white marker on this rock indicates we are on a marked footpath. So whilst this is private land, this footpath is publicly accessible. I'm just looking here actually, this plant in here with these branches here. Oh yeah, here's a better example as well. These tree-like plants here are tree tobacco. Species of Nicotiana, so related to actual true tobacco. But this is tree tobacco. I don't suppose I need to explain why it's called tree tobacco. It's a woody plant. And here are the flowers. I don't think this is native. I think this is introduced from the Americas. But it does very well here, and so it's found across wide areas in the Mediterranean. It is a member of the tobacco family. In case you're wondering, I don't think it's actually cultivated for tobacco, as in tobacco for smoking. Anyway, I'm going to stop now because I'm starting to get too hot. It's time to head back down. So I'm going to head back down to the campsite, get myself in the shade, a nice big cool drink, and then maybe we'll pop back out this evening and see if there's any additional species that are in flower in the evening that aren't around during the day. Of course, if there's anything interesting on the way back down here as well, I'll stop and we'll just, well, that's coming next, I suppose. Did we stop and look at these white flowered cistus on the way up? I don't think we did. So this is another cistus. Not quite as showy as the big pink ones, but beautiful in its own right. There are, I think, 3 species of cistus here in this valley that I've seen before, but I think one of them is not in flower at the moment, or at least the flowers aren't out at this time of day. So perhaps we'll get that a bit later. Here's a slightly better specimen of that mustard family plant, or actually maybe a different mustard, but again we're looking at a mustard family plant. We can tell because of these 4-petaled flowers. And also we've got some little seed pods here, which actually superficially look, I suppose, a bit like pea pods, but they're a little bit longer and thinner, and yeah, I suppose you could mistake those for pea pods, but you couldn't mistake the flowers for pea flowers. I think this is a slightly more kind of acid yellow mustard than the one we saw earlier, so it might be a different species. And unfortunately all the app is able to tell me on that is it's mustard family, which is as far as I got on my own. See, here's another one which I tend to think that, given the sprawling bushy habit of that one and the slender upright habit of this one, let's have a look. The seed pods are very similar, but then they would be, that's a family thing. The flowers are also very similar. Could be the same species, and it could be that that's its first year and this one's been established for more than 1 year. They tend to be short-lived plants though, so maybe not the same thing. But as I say, the app was only able to get me as far as mustard family, and I concur. So I said I'd mention this mallow plant I keep seeing. This is more leafy, this mallow, than anything I've seen here before. in previous visits, and I think that is again just because of this uncommonly large rainfall they've had in the start of this year. Everything is just a little bit greener than normal. Well, greener than it has been in previous visits. I don't want to decide what's normal for this place because these things go in phases, I think. Yeah, here's more of this mallow here. Looks like maybe common mallow, field mallow, something like that. I happen to know there's a really big one up here. Actually, we'll have a look at that more closely. I think it might have some flowers on it too. There is also a lot of this plantain around. I'm not sure what plantain this is, but it's not one we have at home. So it's not ribwort plantain, it's not Plantago media, and it's not hoary plantain either. It's not any of the others. Oh, well. That is to say, well, actually that I think is a cistern, and that's a well. So there's a well here. Oh, hello. And presumably there would have been perhaps a pump that pumped water out into this cistern here. I wonder how old this is. Maybe part of a little homestead that was here at some point. Well. But anyway, I was going to say there's more of this mallow down here. It's a very vibrant, lush, green mallow. I'm just going to do an ID on these different daisies here because that is interesting. Yeah, I'm fairly sure that this and this are the same species. This is just a form that happens to have grown, what I think, in a rather pretty fashion actually. I think that's rather nice the way those petals are bi-coloured like that. There's another one over there like that. And indeed in there. Not native. This is jumping cactus, a species of Opuntia. So called because these spines have horrible barbs on them, and if you just brush against it you can end up with a chunk of this cactus broken off and stuck into your skin. It happened to me as a child actually. And so people call it jumping cactus because it seems like the thing jumped on you because you just walked past it. Different species of Opuntia there. That is the common prickly pear. And it actually looks like it might be the cultivated form because it's not very prickly. But I can't see very many spines on that, but there may still be those tiny invisible prickly hairs called glochids, which this one also has in abundance. What's very interesting about this jumping cactus here is that it has fruited. So this is a stem here. That's a stem. These are more stems, I think, growing from that stem, although they may be flower buds. These are fruits. But they're fruits, and it's grown a fruit and then just used it as a stem. And so there's a whole series of, you can see there's a flower. That's where the flower was on the end. These have all got flower scars, but some of them have got a flower scar, and then another flower grew on the end of the flower. So this plant uses its flowers, its fruits, as stems. I don't know if these have actually developed as fruits at all, because they just look like they've carried on being just part of the plant. Quite interesting. Anyway, we were talking about mallow, weren't we? So here is the mallow that I've been talking about. Look at how lush and green this is. Very, very tiny flowers. So this is not a mallow species I'm very familiar with, but we will identify it. But there's also, oh, that's Viper's bugloss in there. There might be more than one species of mallow here, because I have seen some with bigger flowers than that. But we'll just ID this one. This one here is apparently called cheeseweed mallow. I think so called because the little fruits are kind of cylindrical. They look like old-fashioned cheeses. We've got more of the nettle-leaved goosefoot growing amongst that there. And I did also see down here somewhere more of that sea beet, which I don't know whether I'm right in calling it sea beet, but we're not very far from the sea. It's over there, in between the land and the sky. But yeah, so there's more of that beet there. But it doesn't seem quite as fleshy and leafy as the sea beet that we get back home. So maybe this is not the Maritima subspecies. This might be just Beta vulgaris. But here it is again. It does seem a little bit different, but the plant is quite variable anyway. But yeah, it seems a little bit different from the coastal sea beet that I'm used to seeing back in the UK, but it's the same species, different subspecies. Anyway, here's another mallow. And I think this one might be common mallow. Not very sure, but bigger flowers. You can see that's how we need to get that apart from. There we go. Bigger flowers on this mallow. Here is a plant which is not native, but this is one we should talk about because this is a potentially forageable plant. This has been planted here. This is on the campsite I'm staying on. And this is called Carpobrotus edulis. This is the sour fig. It's not a fig. And it's got these daisy-like flowers, which are not actually daisies. So this one's yellow. And this is the one that's most commonly eaten. And the fruits, here's one that flowered a few days ago. The fruits are in there. Don't think that's quite ripe yet. And I'm a little bit early in the season to find any ripe fruits, but that's the part that would be edible right there. So that's Carpobrotus edulis, and it's an invasive plant actually if it gets out of control, especially on coastal locations. It's quite well known for that anyway. I think some people do eat the leaves as well. These big fleshy leaves that look like chips, or French fries if you prefer. I think some people do eat those too. There's another plant related to it here actually, which is another member of the Mesembryanthemum family. Very similar little flowers, different leaves, but again succulent leaves. Related, this might be ice plant actually, I'm not sure. But anyway, so that's Carpobrotus edulis. There is another species that's really common, which has got bright pink flowers, and I can see some just up here. So let's go and have a look at those. So very similar plant, very similar leaves, very similar flowers, but pink. Actually very pretty. There we go. That's two different species of Carpobrotus that are growing here on this campsite. And as I say, they can be an invasive and problematic weed in some contexts. In other contexts they are quite useful for stabilizing sand dunes and banks and things like that. They very quickly carpet a sandy bank or something, so they can be useful for preventing sand dunes from blowing away. So with some of these things I'm not sure whether it's going to be just that there isn't such blazing hot sun, so I'll be able to see the colours of some of the plants a little bit more clearly, and I might notice things that I overlooked on the previous visit. But some things do change throughout the day. So these are the pink cistuses we looked at yesterday afternoon, and at this time in the morning the flowers are still just opening and they're all crinkled up, and the colour looks a lot darker here when they're like this. And so as the day warms up, those will open up, and then tonight they'll just drop their petals and they'll open a new set of flowers tomorrow. See, there's the thing I didn't see yesterday. There is what looks like a campion of some sort. Tiny little pink campion. I wonder what that is. Let's do the Seek app. Catch flies. Okay, it says it's a catch fly. Can we find one on its own somewhere? Find a few more. Here we are. So that says it was Silene secundiflora. Now here's something I didn't spot yesterday, and this plant here is a parasite. This grows on the roots of other plants, so it has no green coloration at all, it has no chlorophyll, And so this is growing parasitically on the roots of some other thing here. So there's another one of them there. So here's one I can't quite identify, but to me this looks like it might be a wormwood, a kind of Artemisia, a tarragon or wormwood or mugwort or something in that family. Which again I think is daisy family. Here's another one we didn't see yesterday, and probably just because I walked past it without noticing. There's another mustard here, by the way, this tiny little yellow flowered mustard, another species of mustard, which we probably won't have a chance of identifying. But this pea family plant here, again we can see it's pea family because it's got those flowers that are shaped like that. It's quite sticky, this plant, actually. It's quite resinous and aromatic. It looks like it might be a rest harrow. One of these plants that has really, really wiry roots. They're called rest harrow because I suppose they interfered with ploughing. But yeah, there we go. This is very, very sticky, glandular. And the resin, it's not particularly nice smell, but it has a distinctive, yeah, well, just resinous smell. Anyway, I think that's some species of rest harrow. The full identification will be on the screen if I can find it. Here's another difference at the early morning part of the day. These are the garland daisies, and all of the petals on the flowers are reflexed like this. They're tipped back. Of course, when I say petals, I mean ray florets, because this is a composite. This is a daisy family, Asteraceae, and so this is not one flower. This is a collection of flowers, and it has disc florets in the middle here and ray florets around the outside. These are ray florets, not petals, but in common parlance it's fine to call those petals because that's what they are functionally. What's interesting here is a mutated Viper's bugloss. This is the normal colour of the Viper's bugloss, magenta through to navy, sort of royal blue. Here's one that's a mutation, and it's a pale pink. Very interesting to see, although I do prefer the purple. These sort of mutations are how a lot of our garden plants came about. So somebody would have noticed something that's a bit different in a wild plant and collected the seed from that plant and grown that. And it might have come true from seed, it might not. It might have reproduced in the same form, or it might not. But this one obviously does come true from seed because there's another one down here, and I see another one over there. So yeah, the process of selecting garden plants and cultivated plants would have originally started like that, where people see something that's a little bit different from the ordinary in a plant that they already know perhaps and gather. So I mean, sea beet is a particular example. So here's a beet, but it's not a very nice leafy one, is it? If we look somewhere else, we'll find more leafy, succulent versions of that. And if we took the seeds from those and grew them, and then selected from those offspring and continue to select like that, we can kind of select for the characteristics that we want. And that's how plant cultivation has worked over the millennia. So here's one that's got bigger leaves. So that might have been better as a vegetable. So that was the same location in the morning. Different because the plants that are flowering are slightly different, some of them. Different because the light's different and you can notice different things. So it's now early evening. It's about 20 past 6. I'm just going to have a wander down this valley again, see if there's anything that's flowering now that perhaps wasn't out during the day. We might find some night flowering things are starting to come out now. It might be a little early in the year for capers to be flowering, but that's the thing that flowers in the evening. Very beautiful flowers, very fragrant. But it might be a little bit early in the year to find that bush in full growth and in flower. But if we're lucky, we might. It might actually be that I'm a little bit on the early side. You know, there's at least 2 hours of daylight until the sun actually dips behind that hill. And of course the horizon is further down than that. But this valley does get its evening a little bit earlier than a flatter place would. Anyway, this is where we got to go. Let's get down there and see if anything looks different. So just looking around, this Viper's bugloss, a lot of the plants are looking a lot bluer at this end of the day. They tend to open quite pink, magenta in the morning and then turn purple and blue towards the end of the day. The convolvulus has folded itself up again very neatly. So those are done for the day. That one's actually just withering. That one's folding up. That one looks like maybe it's going to have another go tomorrow. That flower's probably finished there. Now some of the plants aren't different, but the evening light really intensifies their colour. In particular, the lavender looks really strikingly purple at this time of day, and the crimson pea flowers are pretty special and really standing out as bright fuchsia and mauve. And this plant, I can't remember, actually it's two different plants here. So there's a pea flower plant, this one, and there's this which I think is Senecio, which is a daisy family flower. I haven't seen any open ones of these, but if we've come across one, I'll show you. Bees just collecting probably the last lot of nectar. This could be their last trip out this evening before it gets too cold for them. It's a shame we couldn't have seen this big yellow thistle, this tree thistle in flower. I think we've got it in a previous video though, if you're interested in that. I think there is more of this plant. This is the, oh, I can't remember what it is. It's a clover-like thing of some sort. And so I'm seeing more of this in full flower now. Really beautiful. And of course it's the best colour. And actually, isn't it wonderful, the combinations of colours we're seeing here? The yellows, the golds, the purple, the mauve, the scarlet. I don't know if I've already mentioned it. I might have already mentioned this once in this video already. That the combinations of colours that you see here never seem to be wrong. In a garden, sometimes you plant two plants next to each other and you think, oh, those don't go. Nature doesn't seem to make those mistakes. So we've got a yellow mustard here. We've got purple lavender behind it. We've got the mauve Viper's bugloss down there. Down there we've got the yellow, the golden yellow garland daisies. We've got the golden yellow scorpion vetch. We've got more lavender. We've got a little hawkweed type of dandelion type of plant down there as well. There's one of those paler garland daisies in there. And then of course the grasses. We've got, I don't know what kind of grass this is. I know that that is oats. That's an oat grass. But none of this looks wrong, does it? None of this ever looks like it clashes or doesn't go. The combination of colours here that nature manages apparently effortlessly just works. So here we've got a different palette of colours. We've got blood red poppies. We've got gold of the garland daisies. We've got a creamy white of wild rocket. We've got a mauvish coloured Viper's bugloss. Again, little bits of purple from the lavender. and kind of whitish green leaves of the senecio and that other thing I can't remember the name of. And there's a tiny little pink something down here. There's a little campion. And again, none of it looks wrong. Am I just getting a bit too sentimental about this? You let me know in the comments if you think so, but I do think that these natural combinations of colours, I've been to gardens, I've been to Mediterranean gardens. There's one at the Eden Project, and I think there's one at Kew Gardens as well, where they've attempted to plant a Mediterranean kind of scrub garden like this, and it doesn't look as good as this. And this is just nature doing its own thing. So I'm not sure that I've seen anything that's actually that's flowering at a different time of day. That is possible to happen, but we haven't seen it today. But getting down here in the evening light has definitely revealed some different things, especially this interplay of colours, which is just so beautiful. And I think in this video I've probably identified less than 10% of the plants that are actually growing here, 10% of the different species that are growing here. And that's okay, because that means there are more surprises to be discovered next time we're here, perhaps at a different time of year when different things are flowering or different things are not flowering. I mean, here's one. What is this little thing? Algerian tea. Let's see what it says. Paronychia argentea. It's from the campion family. I would not have thought that was from the campion family. Doesn't look like one. I suppose it's a little bit like that recumbent pearlwort that we saw in a car park back in Weymouth. So I think another time, another visit here, especially focusing on the really tiny things. A lot of the tiny little plants we've probably overlooked on this trip, but that's fine. That means there's something to look forward to next time I'm here. There's always something to look forward to when I'm here, but to know that there are probably 90% of the species in this valley that I haven't even really looked at properly yet is just tantalizing at the same time as promising. The pink cistus, look at these blossoms. They're now looking so faded and tired, and the petals are falling off. These blooms last a single day. They kind of open up bright and fresh, and by the end of the day they're completely spent. But they've done their job. All of these previously opened flower buds hold the possible promise of seeds of the next generation of plants. Here again is an example of a slightly atypical specimen of a species that we've looked at a lot, the garland daisy. Here's one that has particularly large ray florets. So again, if you were going to select something for the garden, this might be a thing you do, so you pick bigger flowers. I've also just noticed there's a little green caterpillar just resting on this flower here. So anyway, I think that's the end of Evening Shrimp's visit to this little valley. I'm now going to hand you back to Mad Dogs and Englishmen Go Out in the Midday Sun shrimp. So thank you for joining me on this little nature ramble here in southern Spain. I hope that's been enjoyable. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.